Welcome back to Sports Tuesday. I am Steve Manderson. My guest is here, and this gentleman, I am very excited to have him on the show. He is the former athletics administrator. He has done so many things. He set the tone for the MEAC conference. He was the first full-time commissioner of the MEAC conference, and he also, before then, back in the day, he played some baseball in the Negro Leagues. We'll definitely talk to him about that as well. Source Nation, let me bring on right now Ken Free. Ken,
Hello,
how are
Steve.
you?
How are you? I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Listen, I thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me.
Yes. You are what they call a table setter, or they are you are a history maker. I think that's the correct word to say in your accomplishments, and especially with the MEAC conference. But before I get into there, I want to touch base with you about your career as an athlete. Professional baseball from 59 to 64. You were a third baseman and shortstop. You actually was in the New York Mets organization around the time when they first started.
I certainly was. I was in their farm system a year before they came in 1961. Started my pro career in the Western Carolina League at the time. I played for Hickory in the Western Carolina League, and then when that International League was not approved by Congress, they decided to expand the major league, 2 teams in the American League and 2 in the National League, which was the Houston Coats and New York Mets and the National and the Angels and a new Senator team in Washington. So the Mets picked my contract up, had a pretty good year in the Western Carolina League, and they sent me to Raleigh in 1961. That was the start of the Mets farm team. The other Mets and the Astros didn't come in to 62, but the Angels and Senators started in 61 in the major leagues. So I was quite fortunate to get that opportunity, and enjoyed that. And of course, that was a benefit of coming out of the Negro League, in which I played in 1959. And of course, I played for the Raleigh Tigers, who had, from the time I left the military and came out, they had joined the Negro League with a franchise. So I joined them, and if my memory don't misrepresent me, I played in the last East-West Negro League All-Star game in Comiskey Park in Chicago in 1959. They may have played one more year, but I'm thinking 59 may have been the last year. And, of course, that was a result of attendance falling each year after Jackie Robinson and black players out of the Negro League, going to the majors. But that was quite an experience. And, of course, baseball was always my dream. I went to North Carolina A&T and to play baseball. And one of the coaches felt that I was wasting my time and tried to get me signed. And I made a mistake and signed and didn't stick with the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1954. So that was the cause of that. And then when I left Raleigh, thought I was going a little higher because I was the only cap to make the Carolina League All-Star team. And but I went to Quincy, Illinois. The next year. Then I went to California League for 2 years. So the Mets had a good look at me, and I guess they decided that I wasn't going to help them much in the big league. So I went back to college and tried to earn my degree.
Well, I tell you, maybe it was a blessing because we all know that first year with the Mets, so they lost. They were 40 and 122. They only won 40 games that year, so at least you can say you weren't part of that.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd have a good chance, but they had a manager named Casey Stengel at the time, and they were paid $25,000 for other players, and all of a sudden they're going to get the best out of them, I guess. And they had some names, and they started off, even though they were losing, they drew a heck of a crowd each night at the Polo Grounds. So even though I hit over 300 that year, player of the month that year at Quincy, I still wasn't brought up. So I became what they call a stabilizer in the organization. I found myself helping other players, and I was a teammate of Bud Harrelson 2 years in the California League, and of course he made it.
Oh, that's right. Wow.
Two or 3 years ago we had a reunion of the '64 Salinas Mets, and I got a chance to see Buddy's World Series ring the year they beat the Orioles. So that was quite a pleasure to see him doing that. But I have no regrets. It's always good to say that you tried rather than not giving yourself a chance and that type of thing. And then, there's no bitterness in my mind, but I do know that there were quota systems even then. And I remember when I played in the Western Carolina League, I worked out with a team in Lexington, but they couldn't sign because they had two black players on the team, and the city wouldn't let them have but two blacks. And so the guy in Hickory was watching the game, and so the manager from Lexington asked him, said, "Man, I'd like to see this guy sign, but we can't take anymore." And the manager at Hickory said, "Well, send him to Hickory because I can take 4 blacks." And so that got me a shot. So so I'm not. Things work in mysterious ways, and you have to just say "ow" when something hits you. If somebody hits you with a bat, you just say "ow" and you move forward. So everything turned out pretty much good for me.
Did you get the opportunity during that time to meet Casey Stengel personally?
No, I didn't. But I could play. They found that in the minors, as they would sign prospects, I would move around to different positions, and they thought I had a shot as Casey's utility guy, playing all the different positions. But he had a guy coming from the Yankees, Punch and Judy hitter. I was a 300 hitter, but they had a guy named Canale or something like that, and he brought him over. So that took that job from me. But I never met Casey personally. But I, looking at his pictures, I know that I wouldn't win that case going against Canale. You could tell the guys that.
Were you a power hitter?
Not a power hitter, but an average. I made contact. As a matter of fact, I know at least one year I set a least strikeout in the California League. My first year out there, '63, I set a record of the least strikeouts in a season. I think I struck out 27 times and over 400 at bats, but I always hit over 300 except 1 year. And
you need to come over to the Yankees and show Aaron Judge how to cut down on the strikeouts, because he's my guy, but he's something else with the strikeouts. So
well, see, when I come through the Negro League, if you struck out too many times, somebody would be up there taking your last strike if you didn't watch, and so you learn to choke up. When you get 2 strikes on you, learn how to choke up on the bat and become a contact hitter instead of going for the fences. Right. And so it was embarrassing to strike out back in my day. And then you learn how to hit line drives, and that's what I was considered a line drive hitter. And I wasn't a super talent, I don't believe, but we were competing against each other when you're dealing with a quota system. It would take the fastest back runners, and I was no way the fastest runner. So they would take guys but you would see maybe 7 or 8 guys that made it that you couldn't carry a stick. But you know, coming up back in those days, I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but my parents were from Greensboro, North Carolina, and they moved back in 1948. So I learned what living in the South was all about, and not being able to stay with your other teammates. They'd stay down in luxury, and we had to find a family to stay with. You learn a lot about life and what you were up against the rest of your career, and so you learn to adjust with that. But I at least tried, and I thought I did good enough to get a shot. And when we had the reunion in '64, a lot of guys thought I got the shaft. But it's easy to say that now. But But I think the good Lord had something else for me, and
that's how you got to look at it. That's how you got to look at it.
Oh yeah, and so I went back to school, and then I got a job with the state of North Carolina as a park and recreation consultant, administering matching grants to cities and counties to develop outdoor recreation areas. So I learned a lot of administration. I learned a lot about league play and commissioners through those minor league experiences and whatever. So I was just ready for something else to happen, because I hadn't given up on myself as far as being that I could lead something, and that's what brought me into the MEAC. So.
Now, before we get into the MEAC, one question I want to ask you. I see here in 1960, you played with Satchel Paige. What was that experience like?
Well, the first of the year, I decided I wasn't going to play any more baseball, and that was the same year I signed with Hickory. But before that season, Winston-Salem Bond James invited Satchel Paige in the Barnstorm with us because Satchel needed one more year to get his full major league pension. He had done 4 years in the majors. So he was staying in shape, hoping that he would get a shot to get that 5th year, in which later on, about 2 or 3 years later, Ted Turner from the Braves picked up Satchel and he got his 5th year. But that was quite an experience, because in Pennsylvania, I saw Satchel Paige play as a little boy. That a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid saw him pitch in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania in the Negro Leagues. So, and then to come back and then to get a chance to play with him, even as an older guy, it was quite a thrill for me to spend those 2 months, 2 or 3 months, 2 months with Satchel before I signed in the Western Carolina League in 1960. So that was quite an experience. Learned a lot from him as it related to what scouts are looking for and what you got to have beneath the skin. You got to have a heart and a lot of tolerance, and you learn that from him. And him being a superstar in the Negro Leagues, and then of course coming up Cleveland, he had been through it all, and so he was very helpful to all of us young guys. And then to get a chance to play with him in 1960 was quite a thrill. Quite a thrill.
The stories I've heard about him, he was quite a dresser. There are photos of him, suited down, sharp, hat, everything. He liked to share the nightlife as well. Did you ever have a chance to maybe at times hang out with him in certain places, maybe like in restaurants or anything like that?
Well, we would eat together sometimes. We go in a town, and of course, when we playing in the South mostly, except when we went to New Jersey to play against Joe Black's All Stars, we would do that. But we were so much younger than him. He didn't let us see him do too many things. Now, the dressing part was a Negro League trait. I mean, you didn't wear nothing that resembled a baseball player when you were traveling. And we dressed up because we felt we'd be accepted more. And all the Negro League players, especially those guys from the Chicago area and Birmingham and them places, they always wore a hat and a suit or a sport coat, and they always wore these garters on their socks, on their stockings. They'd be dressed to kill, man. I never could. My legs weren't big enough to wear those garters, so them cats would be clean. We'd call them cleaner than the Board of Health. We would see them, and Satchel was always clean. And we had a thing that part of our promotion was to get in a town that we're trying to draw fans, get in there early and mingle and go to the restaurant and whatever, and let the bus be seen in town. And then that was during the placard days. You know, people who had invited you to play in their town would have placards, and they'd always have Satchel picture on there. And they'd have old pictures of Josh Gibson and all them on the placard, even though they wasn't playing when I played. But those guys set a pace. But you never see a Negro League player in these books and things that were not. You couldn't wear a baseball cap on the road or nothing like that. You know, if you didn't wear a hat or nothing like that, you still didn't wear anything resembling the player. And some of it taught us that people come to see young kids play, and they don't want to see. The theory was that you don't want people to see you out with a baseball cap on or something resembling the team that's going to play that night or the next day. You didn't want people, if you're having a bad night, start throwing up about, we saw you out to 12 o'clock last night, or we saw you drinking a beer or something like that. Because people let you know about you having a bad night, and they saw you out on the town the night before. So they taught us how to behave yourself, how to behave yourself. And, cause, you know, people say, oh, that's all right, come on, let's go out and drink. But they the first ones that holler from the stands if you're having a bad night, what caused it. So you had to be careful of people back then. So we didn't let people know we were ball players until now. Sometimes there were some females. Sometimes there were some females that you wanted to come to the game. You might tell them that you're playing that night or something like that. But for the most part, and Satchel and them didn't want us young boys to see none of that stuff that we heard about him. You know, he didn't let us see that. But he was his own man. You know, he pitched. Satchel pitched everywhere we played during that week. We might play 5 times a week, and he would pitch 2 innings every night. And he would pick those innings where he didn't, unless something unusual happened, he didn't want to go to the plate and bat because he didn't want to run. But one day that thing happened where they batted around and he's in the game and pitched his 2 innings, and I hit behind him, and they messed around and walked him, and I come up and hit a line drive between the outfielders, and I saying to myself, man, that's 3. And I'm rounding first and rounding second. And I got ready to slide in the third, and there's a big foot standing on third base. And he looks over at me and said, where in the hell you think you're going? I said, back to second if I can make it. And so we had a lot of fun out of that because I didn't make it back to second. So, but he was just that. He wasn't going no further. He didn't care if I had hit it for 2 triples. He wasn't going no further than third base. And it took him forever to get there. So, but he should have scored easily on that triple. But we had a lot of fun.
Well, I tell you, you for the 5 years, so from 59 to 64, you did a lot. in that time that you should be very proud of and accomplished a lot, and it was great. When I saw that in the bio, I said, you played some Negro League ball. I said, well, okay, we're definitely going to talk about that. Now, want to get into the MEAC conference, and because you made history at the time. Now, right off the bat, it says here. Now, of all the jobs you applied for, all kind of jobs in your career, you didn't apply for the job as MEAC commissioner. Why not?
Well, I felt that they were looking for a full-time commissioner because their aim was to get in compliance and go Division I and 1AA in football. And one of my best friends helped found the MEAC, but they didn't ask me to apply. I don't know whether they didn't recognize my talent or whatever, because I was working with the state of North Carolina, but I was refereeing football and basketball for CIAA, and then I joined the MEAC officiating. And when I found out later there was 3 or 4 guys who interviewed for the job, and they turned it down. But that didn't tell me anything about the MEAC. And then my friend said, Ken, you ought to be, you ought to, that'll be a good job for you to be a consulate. I'm a little upset that you didn't ask me to apply to myself. And I said I'd look into it. And I had all kinds of benefits at the time. And I had given black colleges more credit than I realized is knowing what they were doing in athletics. And so I thought it would be a good idea to become my own boss and to put some talent to use. So I agreed, and there were a few questions about whether my credentials, of course, would qualify me to do it, but I didn't realize they were on their knees then, and that's why the good Lord brought them to their knees, because He wanted me to have that job, and without a PhD and all that back in black college days, that's almost a requirement. They didn't look at expertise; they looked at degrees, and we're still doing some of that in the black colleges now, and I don't know of anything past an undergrad degree to help you in athletics and experience. And so they voted me in as the first full-time commissioner, and then I realized I had a lot of work to do. But my background revealed to me that my mandates was to get us in compliance, to go Division I, to expand the conference, and to market and get our name out there more. So I jumped on those three things. Of course, getting a bunch of people in compliance who just been running their own programs, so to speak. Monitoring them became a problem. But I had athletic director of the city of Greensboro athletics in Negro League, Negro activities they call it, and I know if I could monitor Little League birth certificates, I could do eligibility forms, because nothing was harder than them Little League coaches cheating. So I said I'll get these people in compliance, and then I'll go expand. So I had to ask 3 schools, 3 founding members, out the conference because they had reneged. I'm on the job a month or 2 to find out that 3 schools withdrew their petition to go Division I. Now they say it informs me that
wow.
That informs me.
What was the reason behind that?
Well, the reason they were spinning their wheels was because they had a tendency not to 100% agree with each other on decisions. And they kept saying they don't need to recruit at that level, Division I level. They didn't have the facilities, and they started using those kind of excuses. But the NCAA gave them a first-time declaration, and 3 schools said they would when they voted, but then they reneged and said their coaches had already brought in some kids that were Division II eligible, but not Division I, and so they thought they was going to stay Division II. And I said, oh, no way. I said, we got the CIAA. Why would I leave the state of North Carolina and you go Division II? So I started looking for some schools. And that's what led me to bring in Bethune-Cookman and Florida A&M.
Mm-hmm.
Florida A&M had won the first NCAA Division I AA football championship, the very first one.
Right.
So they were already Division I as an independent.
Mm-hmm.
They indicated to me that Bethune-Cookman usually do what they do. So we went after Bethune-Cookman, and they agreed to leave the SIAC and become Division I. So I only needed 6 schools, but the NCAA had put us on probation and gave me a year to come back up to 6 Division I schools to stay at Division I. So I went and got them, and then we went from there. And then I noticed that they didn't have any programs for the kids. So that's when I came up with the Hall of Fame, created a Hall of Fame, and then I created an All-Star game, patterned after the one Black College All-Star game they had, except that All-Star game was not certified by the NCAA. Therefore, they could not use our coaches, and our players could not participate in these sports. Yeah, and so they used Willie Wood and Irv Cross. And so I said, well, I'm going to create an all-star game for us. I'm tired of us begging to go to these other bowl games. So I created the Freedom Bowl, but I got it certified. Now my coaches can coach in it, and our kids do not lose their eligibility for spring sports. And see, the other way, those that wanted to wrestle, play baseball, and run track, they couldn't do it without certification game. So I got that game, and we did it in Atlanta, and but they hadn't done anything for the kids. And Hall of Fame, of course, was created so that some of the kids that did play outstandingly in the MEAC could be recognized after a certain amount of years being out, and based on some of their accomplishments outside of sports. And so getting in compliance, expanding the league, and I continued that philosophy at my last 2 schools I brought in. I brought in Coppin State, and then I brought in Hampton and Norfolk, and they didn't renew my contract. I don't know if things were good then, though. And, of course, I didn't when I decided to come, I made sure I didn't price myself out of it because I felt I needed to be there. So I never got the big salary. But I understand they're making good money now. But it became attractive to those that didn't want it when I took it, and that's interesting to me because I never thought about it. I never thought about working for colleges, black colleges would be worse than some of the other people's venues. So I was pretty lucky, and then things happened to me like that, Steve. I mean, I was the first black on the NCAA Division I men's basketball committee, and it wasn't all racial. It wasn't racial. I nominated another guy, and it ended up me. But it was mainly because you had to be an administrator to be on that committee. You couldn't be a coach or nothing like that. And we only had 3 black administrators. in Division One, and one was the commissioner of SWAC, and the other was Charles Harris, who replaced me at the MEAC when he was at Arizona State. So, but since then, we've had some outstanding. Plus, Charles Harris was outstanding athletic guy, and then from then on, of course, we had some of the schools hire black athletic directors, and they've had some good guys, better than me, on that basketball committee. Because anytime they talked over $500,000, I was lost, and they talking about $500 million and stuff. So, but they had better guys than me on the basketball committee after that 5 years I spent on it. So, but anyway, I think that something set in, and I didn't realize it at first, but when you get an organization you're trying to lead and you're trying to take them to the heights, and you oppose some of them in a meeting or something, that somebody asked me one day, now don't you get too big for your britches. Now I it didn't hit me right away, but then eventually I saw what they meant, and so I was not ready to lead the MEAC because I just brought in Norfolk and Hampton, and I needed Virginia conference from Delaware, Maryland, and Howard. And I needed Virginia because we were skipping over Virginia going to Central. A&T Central was gone. I had to get rid of. They back now, North Carolina Central, but I brought back Morgan and UMES, who were the other two schools along with Central that I had to. I gave them 30 days to get in compliance, or they would no longer be considered a member of the MEAC. So, so that's basically how I got in there. Good Lord had to bring them to their knees to hire a person like me, but it was meant to be. And but I left unexpectedly and missed it dearly for a long time. But then I went on and spent 10 years as a commissioner of a conference that was out of South Carolina, Edward Waters in Florida, and Nova Scotia in North Carolina. But the other five schools were in South Carolina, called the Eastern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. And of course, two of those schools left. Benedict and Claflin left and went to SIAC. You're familiar with all them terms, aren't you? SIAC and all that thing.
Yeah. Eventually, I did get it over the course of years. Yeah. So, yeah, it's true. It is true. I'm going to talk about the fundraising aspect of what you did, and the sponsors that you brought in was fantastic. I mean, Schlitz Brewing Company, Tannhauser-Busch, Budweiser, Miller Brewing Company, Coca-Cola, U.S. Airways, Sarah Lee, McKinley Financial Services, and then from from broadcasting, television, media, BET and ESPN. That's fantastic. Although I'm sure that a lot of work was put into getting those sponsors. Because you're talking about major sponsors here. And what was the marketing strategy behind getting these particular sponsors?
Well, I would personally go to these companies, and I'd give as we went up the line, I would give the one I had first right of refusal, and if they didn't come up with that, I'd move to the highest bidder. But I always gave the one I had a chance to deal with it. But the key to my success in bringing it in was being able to sell the program, not in a letter, not on the telephone, but to go to those places. Black colleges don't like to get off them campuses and go nowhere. But I would go because I found out years ago that I was hustling in recreation, going to these local stores and stuff, getting uniforms for Little League kids and whatever. But the people would not buy into my sponsorships unless they felt my compassion. And you can't pass it in no letter or on no telephone. And some people, if you sit across a table and they see your compassion, your commitment, they buy into it. And so when I went to Miller, I had Buddy Wise and Anheuser-Busch, and this guy went heads over heels, and he made sure that he bought Anheuser-Busch out of the picture, and same way with Coca-Cola, but both of these guys with Shropshire was a guy in Miller, and then I forget the guy's name I started with, but these guys started out on salesmen, and they said when they traveled the South, black colleges was the only place they could stay in most of these towns. So they felt the obligation to help black colleges wherever they are. Now, I made it clear to them that the company's not going to get more out of this than we are. And so I got big bucks out of Miller and Coke. When I did the Freedom Bowl, I needed $150,000, and they came up with $100,000 right off the bat, $50,000 apiece.
Wow!
So to do that, and so it was just that I was more personal with what I do and what I did, and always living up to what I promised them, and always say thank you, and not that you, but they had decided that most black colleges made them feel like you ought to do this because we're a black college. I didn't play that. No, you don't have to do any of that. But I would give them a reason. But I never, and I guess this is my recreation background, I always put the kids first. You're doing this for these kids. And that's the key to some of my success in getting sponsorships. Because most of it ain't about brilliance, it's about whether I like you or not. And so I can truly say that the compliments that I got from these companies always called me appreciative guy, gentleman, and that kind of thing. So it was very important to me to do those things. But that's what you learn outside growing up like I did. And I waited tables. I worked in a motor line company and pajama factories. And traveled on that bus, trying to better myself in the Negro Leagues and all that. And you learn something from so many ways that you don't learn in college. And so it's just amazing how when you're dealing with people, there's more personal relationships than being able to express your brilliance all the time. You know, I'd never used the term commissioner when I was begging. You know, if you're that important, you shouldn't be begging. I mean, you should be giving out money. I mean, Dr. So-and-so, if I'm Dr. So-and-so, using that term, half of these guys that are rich didn't finish college. And so you got to make sure you don't be more important than the people you begging, because fundraising is a good fancy term that people use now, but it was called begging when I come along. And so I carried knee pads, so that, I carried knee pads with me, because I might have to get on my desk. As long as nobody see me down there, I'd be away from home. Any consultant is a consultant if he's 50 miles away from home. And so I had them knee pads on in case I had to get down there and beg. And because that's what it's called to me. It ain't about fundraising, it's about begging. And so that's how I got through some of my confusion and that kind of stuff. And then I took I had a tremendous staff that were made, handmade. I mean, I didn't know and advertise for people. I had a lady there that had been with the conference 4 years that knew everything. She ran the conference with the other guy, and I made her my administrator. Well, more than that, she was called secretary, but I made her assistant to the commissioner, and I could pass off everything to her and go to something else, and it would be run. And then I had a publicity guy that was very good at what he did, and so they had no previous experience in running an operation like we ran. Somebody said, "Boy, how many people you got?" And they'd be surprised when I said 3, 3 and 3, and we picked up some volunteers and stuff when we had the basketball tournament and whatever. But I had run some things in the Army. I had played football and basketball and baseball in the Army, and so I knew how to run a tournament and stuff like that and put some class into it. But I made sure that we didn't do a lot of speeches and stuff. We did half times and intermissions. The kids participated. The national anthem, the bands would play, and because I've always believed that the more kids in these colleges that you use at your fundraising programs, that parents and stuff come to see their kids perform just like the football players or the basketball players. So you're talking about people coming to see their kids perform. Sometimes it's a whole family of people come to watch those kids. So that increases your attendance. But as a whole, my main objection that I was trying to get them to understand also is that in order to raise funds and stuff, because I went to ESPN and got $10,000 seed money to do a pilot program so we could have the Black College Sports Today on TV. And I learned these people when I was on the basketball committee because, ESPN was doing the first and second rounds and before we got to CBS. But we would make sure that the kids, because you go to some of these tournaments and it's dominated, half times and stuff are dominated by speeches and stuff. And some of our football games, man, our teams get penalized because people are still out there on the field talking. And so, but you got to let those kids perform, and because people come to see them play. And so, but black colleges are not fan friendly, and they suffer from attendance. I know some of the quality of athletes attend our schools anymore, but that's the more reason you should be more fan friendly. I'm noticing that black colleges now, instead of going out here raising funds like I thought I had to do, I noticed that they fundraisers to some of these colleges to go up on ticket prices. A less quality program, but they go up on ticket prices or student fees, and that's not fair. And that's not fair. They got to get up off their haunches. So you can't operate a black college like a military base anymore. But once the entertainment dollar came open, we don't have to go to no black college sports event. We can bowl now on Saturday. We can go to the golf course now. They open to us in the South. And so back in the day when you couldn't go to nothing, best thing to do. That's why we used to dress up so much when we went to the game. We don't show out. I mean, North Carolina A&T have a homecoming in October and sometime in November. People be sweating and going on fur coats on, three-piece suits and hats and all, and be burning up, sweat coming everywhere. Now we've finally got to the place where we loosen up and let it come in sport outfits and jumpsuits and stuff like that. So, but anyway, it's I don't want to get off what you're looking for tonight.
No, it's fine. One question I do want to ask you, and when we were talking about fundraising, what influence was Mel Blount a major influence in the relationship between the MEAC conference and the NFL?
Oh yeah. Well, let me tell you a story. Mel Blount was working. The NFL hired Mel Blount to speak to some of this. It started with Emerson Wall. You know, NFL would always tell you that the reason black colleges don't get draftees or whatever is because they have to teach them so much, and so they don't spend that money up front. But Emerson Wall came in there from Grambling and made Rookie of the Year and made everything. They said, you said coaching was the reason? So they hired Mel Blount and to work with Roger Goodell, who is now the commissioner. And that's how I met him. And so Roger and Mel Blount helped them get our coaches into NFL camps. But it was so interesting because I went to Pete Rozelle invited us up, and we talked. And he said we can't sponsor because we'll open up Pandora's box. We can't sponsor anything, but we'll get back with you on a way we can get each club to help out something. So me, Mel Blount, and Roger Goodell worked out a package deal. The package deal consisted of invitations to our banquet, press box privileges, and game film in 3 parts: the full game film, the defensive film, and an offensive film. And so I think we got to sell them that package. I think at that time was $2,500 a team. So they got all of the teams to buy the package. So that eliminated being a sponsorship type concept. Mel Blount was right there with Roger in doing that. So I don't know how many teams they had during that time, but it was about 27 teams, and times $2,500. We sold them that package, and we added that to the Miller and Bruin money and Coke's money, and we didn't have much to break even to raise, and so we did that. We established a relationship with the NFL, and Schwack was a partner, and so we Mel Blount is just a heck of a nice guy, and he was interested in that, coming out of the black colleges and stuff. He helped in the NFL and black colleges a lot, and I want him to know that if you ever talk to him. But I appreciate Mel Blount and Roger too. Roger was very, very nice, and he sent me one of the nicest notes when he was named commissioner, and I emailed him at the time. I can't, and but Roger Goodell was very nice in his response, and so I can't get up with him now though. But at the beginning of that, it was great. But I do remember they included us in a lot of different kind of workshops as it related to public relations and our marketing people at the schools. We showed up, and they would would help us with some ideas about marketing our programs. And so all those things were helpful. But no, yeah, Mel Buck was very, very, very much involved with us. And I wonder what's he doing now. I don't have an idea.
I think he's still with the NFL office. I didn't hear anything different. I think he's still with the NFL front office. Like he's had that position now well over close to 30 years after his retirement and everything. And but as you said, this guy was a great man, a great ball player, a Hall of Famer. I think he's still there.
Last time I saw him, he had a little farm, a boys' camp or something down in Savannah, and I remember that because he had some horses down there, and there was some kind of camp he had. It wasn't a boot camp, but it was something similar. And but I lost that address and everything too. And but even in that first Freedom Bowl we had, and I said we do our own bowl, and let's stop worrying about going to the Senior Bowl or the East Coast. Go if you get invited, but stop complaining and create your own bowl. So that's what I did. But the first year, because we had a NFL day in that week where they worked out and stuff, we had 7 kids that was invited to an NFL camp that wasn't thought of prior to that game, and 4 kids made it. I can't remember their name, but it's in some of our, should be in the MEAC office, the name of the 4 kids that stuck, because I know one kid stuck with the Atlanta Falcons, but it made it worthwhile, and but they try to create things differently. And then I got involved with called the Heritage Bowl, and but all these things that we did, I expected them to, when I left, to expand on those things and make them better. But they did away with them, and then eventually they come back with something similar instead of building on something. But I guess it's a mentality that, if we didn't create it, we don't blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't that way when I took over. I would take the good that the previous commissioner did and try to make it better. And those things that were not successful, I might replace it. But it didn't make sense to me to start something over that was already doing good in existence and just iron out a few things that would make them better. So, it's a funny world. I never worked on a black college campus, and so there was a lot of stuff that I learned the hard way in trying to figure out people. The first group of presidents that hired me let me, and the ADs let me do my thing. I have to give them credit. It was the people that came in after these guys retired and moved on, that I guess it's that thing that I didn't know anything about. It's what have you done for me lately type thing. And not having appreciation for the history and how far we came. I know that somebody recommended that, tried to convince me, actually, what Ken did, you ought to have an award. Well, I named 2 awards after somebody else, but I wasn't thinking about that. Somebody else recommended it. I hadn't heard anything about it. And I understand that people, I guess they don't want you to gain too much recognition when you're gone. I don't know.
Right.
But I just hate it sometimes that my grandkids and stuff don't, sort of written out of the book. Kind of hate that and that kind of thing. So, but maybe I'm kind of slow now days, and those things are all right, but they don't bother me that I'm not that, and so. But don't let me do all the talking, Steve. I just get rattling sometimes.
I love listening. I just love listening to you. That's fine. One question: you've mentioned the SWAC conference. What originally when you became commissioner of the MEAC? What was the relationship like between the MEAC and the SWAC? Was it good in the beginning? Did it, as years went on, it became better? What was it originally, the relationship between the MEAC and the SWAC?
Well, when I came on, SWAC didn't have a commissioner. It had one, but he was no longer there. So they had the president of the conference was acting commissioner, Norris Edney out of Alcorn. And so we got along well. They went along with me with the Freedom Bowl and that type of thing. And then Jim Frank came on later. And as far as I'm concerned, SWAC got along pretty good because when we had to come up with Division I schedules in basketball, we met together with a way to get all the necessary Division I games you needed to have. So if it meant playing 3 times in one school or whatever, we were going to get that done. They were trying to tell us to merge with SWAC. And we said, no, each one needs to be Division I. So we came up and met all the criteria if we had to make some sacrifices. And that's the relationship we had. I don't know how it is now, but it was like mostly it was hot and cold type thing between some of the schools. But as far as the conference is concerned, we did all we could to blend our efforts together to be successful on the Division I level. And we all had misconceptions about being available for the NCAA playoffs versus playing classics and whatever. And that's been the only type conflicts that we've had. But I consider it a good relationship. And then they eventually hired to replace Jim Frank a guy named Rudy Washington. Rudy Robinson. And but somehow or another he started the Black Coaches Association. And none of that seems to exist now. But Rudy was a good guy. And but I was gone when he took over. I was with Jim Frank. And but that's about all I have. Except if you got some questions.
Well,
more
questions. In terms of how much influence did you have with the schools in the MEAC in regards to athletic scholarships? Did you have a big hand in that in determining how many athletic scholarships that each school is allowed to offer, or how did that work?
Oh, that worked. If you played in the NCAA, they had all of that worked out for you with scholarships. You know, 1AA had X number of scholarships, and the 1A had theirs, Division II, and Division III. I don't know that much about it, but it was I had nothing to do with the amount of scholarships. If I sanctioned a school or something, I could take away. But in football, when we were allowed 75 or 85, I forget, scholarships, some of our schools never reached that at the time. and
Mm-hmm.
but they were allowed up to that number, and those kind of things. But as you mentioned it, I had to monitor those things. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
I mean, to make sure we don't
Yes,
violate.
yes. Right.
But the NCAA set
That's
all the
good.
pace for all of that. Mm-hmm. And
No.
but we would always,
Now the other thing,
you know.
mm-hmm. One of the major things that has always been a concern for me is we were talking about like the Heritage Bowl and the Freedom Bowl. Here in New York, where I'm at, we used to have every year the Whitney M. Young Classic, and
Right.
and I would go there, to cover the games and everything. What bothered me, and still does today, is the lack of attendance in these games, the lack of support. Now, because where at MetLife Stadium, where they would hold the games, there would, in my opinion, it seems like there would be more people outside the stadium in terms of vendors and tailgating than it is in the stadium itself. I asked one lady one time, I think it was Morgan State against Southern, one of those, and I asked the lady that was with one of those schools, I asked her, do you have an idea, can you figure out why the attendance is so low? She pretty much summed it up. She says, well, the schools in the conferences, if their school is not participating in the game, they're really not going to promote the other schools. And I found that kind of alarming. What is your opinion of that?
Well, that was alarming to me when I came in. I couldn't believe that you had 4 schools. There were 7 members, and you had 3 schools to renege on the other 4, and put us in a situation where we were given a year probation. That is true. The other schools don't support each other, and I could not understand it either. There was a lot of stuff I couldn't understand why our people do that. That envy and jealousy. Now, it wasn't as much that way when I first came in from the president's standpoint, because those old presidents were okay in bridging gaps. But you got guys now running these colleges and stuff, 1 or 2 that way, but they're not going to help anybody be successful. And I've experienced that with my activities. I mean, the Heritage Bowl was a similar situation, and you would think that they would make these things successful. And then the schools, I don't know how much you know about it, but the schools nowadays want everything for nothing that they're not involved in. And
right.
And, I never heard of so much complimentary this and complimentary that in all my days. And it's all right for complimentary luncheon or a banquet or something like that, but game tickets, gee whiz, I just couldn't believe it. But that's the way it is in black colleges. So I
that it really bothers me when I used to go there and see, and now it doesn't seem like they're going to have games there. They haven't had a game there in the last 2-3 years. It was the New York Urban League that sponsors.
That was a big thing at one time.
Yeah, and I'm like, all of a sudden, we haven't seen a game there in about 3 years. So
wow.
It's like, wow, you just did away with this now, and it really is concerned because years ago, it was major, and now it
Oh
seems
man,
like there's no interest in it anymore.
yeah, it's unbelievable how we have
Yeah.
deserted ourselves because that game
Mhm.
when I first came in, that game between Morgan and Grambling in New York was big, Whitney Young
Mhm.
Classic, and then of course I remember that they complained about the stadium field, uh, uh, and they moved it to New Jersey, the
Mhm.
Meadowlands, and the attendance
Yeah.
started
Mhm.
falling off. You were covering then?
I was going to the games then, yeah, and every year it seemed like it got less and less people, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not good. There's got to be much better support. But I guess, and
Yeah,
now
you're right.
we don't even have a team up there anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well, you're absolutely right.
uh,
That's what happened. They kill their own self.
yeah, and it's a shame. It's always like that, and I don't understand why it doesn't make any sense to me. It really doesn't. One of the last questions I want to ask you and talk to you about before I let you go, and I'm really it's been a pleasure to have you on here and educate the listeners in the history, of how you brought up the conference. Uh, recent scandal came about a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure you heard about it in regards to college basketball, where the FBI has been investigating now the bribery and fraud that's been going on in the with certain schools, and there were 10 arrests um, for assistant coaches and some executives from Adidas involved, and
Oh yeah.
probably some more. Yeah. What and there's a possibility. I had a guest on last week. Robert T. Green has a company called Post Game Incorporated. He's a player rep, and he basically said this could be the tip of the iceberg in regards to what's been going on for years in terms of bribing high school athletes to go to play for their schools, and having shoe companies like Adidas involved, and um, they feel that it most likely could make its way into football as well. What is your opinion about all this? And do you think this could, something like this could infiltrate the MEAC or the SWAC?
Yeah, and I first of all, I knew that there was a lot of stuff going on way back there because
Mhm.
the more they started recruiting in the inner city, the more I
Mhm.
would find out. See, a lot of people didn't know. Uh, most of my folk are in the inner city, and some of the kids that I knew that were getting payouts, I would ask the parents, because I knew why. I'd ask their parents why
Mhm.
they didn't consider some MEAC schools and all, and they'd always tell me, "You don't do enough for the you ain't paying enough, or you ain't doing this, you're not giving this." And I would say, but the criteria is the same. The recruiting for black colleges in Division I is no different than at Carolina or another school. So I found out that there was a lot of schools doing wrong. What the enticement or inducement was, uh, uh, shoe contracts and stuff dominated a lot of stuff. I could not get a
Right.
solid, big name shoe company because some of our coaches were getting more from different shoe companies. and the school was hiding behind what that did for their program. And I know that I had Converse against Nike and whatever, and these were things that are going on, but you can't control it because they would always vote down a shoe contract. Now I could get an off-brand shoe. They might come in for 3 or 4 or 5 teams that might agree to it, but as a whole conference offer the signage and all those things, I couldn't get it. And so, and it was basically because of these agents and stuff was involved. And I know that one year I got one company to give our championship team uniforms and sweatsuits and all that kind of stuff. When they named some people involved, particularly agents and this kind of thing, I knew it was a violation. But commissioners can't do much about disciplining that type of thing because commissioners don't vote on anything. You make recommendations, you put your program out there, but you only giving advice and recommendations, but you don't have a vote. You just the executive director. And so you can't do much about it. I don't like it. And that's the same thing that Rick Pitino got fired about, isn't it?
Got fired for it, yeah. Yes, sir. That's right.
That's the same thing, yeah. So you know it must have been going on a long time because you wonder what it takes to get some of the players that they have. And well, a lot of people got fat off that stuff, man. And but as a commissioner, it's nothing much you can do about it. And but all I know is that the big schools dominated that. And but to see it was a couple of brothers that got involved in that, and I hate that. But if I answered the question, I hope I have. But I can't.
Yeah, you did.
I can't do anything about it. But I know it was going on because I have been advised that Ken, you don't want to get involved in that. That type of attitude. And but I knew it wasn't right. But there's very little you could do about it. But and it must have been right for a long time because it took a while for them to catch up with these people. And I don't know. I guess after a while it started telling on itself. I mean, I was surprised to hear that they came out that openly. Yes, but it did. So.
Yes,
but don't worry about it. And I don't keep up with stuff like I used to because I can't do this modern stuff on. I was scared that I wasn't going to be able to figure out how to get. After I turned past 80, all this modern technology stuff, I can't keep up with it. But I tell you what, would be interesting. Of course, you're a friend of Ed
Hayes, yes.
Ed Hayes, aren't you?
Yes,
I talked to him, and it would be interesting to see if we could get a sponsor or something to bring a selected group of administrators together and talk about some of that stuff. But anything that you want to talk about, why this and why that in black colleges and stuff, I'd bring some of them presidents and stuff together, and get one of the schools to host it, and invite certain people and get a sponsor to bring them in, and or get the You got the commissioners and the 4 black conferences. Division II and stuff don't have that much, but the girl that's in charge of the CIAA commissioner, she worked with the NCAA some, and she knows some in and out things with that to bring them together, and it would be interesting to see what is said. Any hard questions or anything you want to know, even going back to what you said about the with the young classical stuff.
Yeah.
There would be good questions to ask. Why
I agree.
They play a Florida. They play a Georgia Classic down there. The 100 Black Men used to do. I don't know whether you heard of that.
Yes.
But
I've heard of that. Yes.
The question was,
No. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying.
No, I haven't. No.
The question used to come to me every year. Why? You made a comment earlier about you didn't see people in the stands, but you saw them tailgating and stuff. Well, at the Georgia Dome, when they had this game, the guy asked me one year, said, why is it that there's more people walking around the stadium than in the seats watching the game?
Right.
Well, it's they visiting skyboxes and all those things. It's like a homecoming. And the game going on. Now you might see the seats fill up when the 2 bands come out there at halftime. But they have so many speeches and stuff out there. They have so many speeches and stuff going on that they extend the halftime. And you can't convince these people. I try to convince our people, let's do pregame and postgame type activities and let the bands have halftime. There ain't nobody there. They ain't there because there ain't nothing going on pregame. And if you do enough good stuff pregame, you can get a crowd there. And traffic ain't as bad.
That's a good point.
Whatever. Huh?
That's a good point.
So,
that is a very good point.
Oh yeah. Because some of the people pay to see the bands and got kids in it, and then you done spent all their time and introducing each other with all these titles and stuff. And people don't come to see that stuff. They come to see the bands and the kids play football. Pre-game, they don't mind coming there early to see that or staying over post-game.
True.
But
that is true.
You did something for me tonight. Is loosen me up a little bit. I was feeling bad all week.
Oh well, I'm glad to make you feel better.
Can't have C and all of that, but
oh gosh,
you got me talking more than I've talked in a long time.
Oh well, I'm glad. It was very interesting and very enlightening and educational. Got an education tonight on what the MEAC really is about and how you were very instrumental in putting it all together. So, on that note, we are out of time, but I thank you very much for coming on the show. You definitely have a home here at Sports Tuesday. You are welcome here anytime. And I think the next time I have you on, man, I'm going to bring in Ed Hayes, and the 3 of us could have a nice panel conversation talking about the MEAC, the SWAC, black college sports in general. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, I think it would be too, and I just appreciate you having me on.
Yes. No problem. I'm very glad and honored to have you on the show. As I said, you're welcome back anytime. And so until the next time, we'll definitely talk down the road. So listen, you take care. God bless. I'll definitely let Ed know. I'll send him an audio, and I'll send you an audio of the show tonight. and we'll definitely get together, the three of us, on Sports Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right.
And
you're welcome.
Tell the young lady, what's her name, Tracy or something like that? Tracy
Jeffcoat. Yeah. Yes.
Just tell her she did her job communicating with me. So we'll talk at another time.
She's the best.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Well,
take care and God
bless. Give her my regards.
All right. I will now. Take care and God bless.
Okay. Thank you. Same to you.
All right. Source Nation, was Ken Free, and the first full-time commissioner of the MEAC conference, and he played some baseball from 59 to 64. In the Negro Leagues, he actually almost was brought up to the New York Mets squad when they first came about in '62, and played ball with Satchel Paige, and learned a lot tonight about what's going on in black college sports, and I hope everybody that tuned in was enjoyed it, was informed, educated, because this is what it's all about. And he definitely will have him back on the show, along with Ed Hayes, who was the host on Source Radio Network of Black College Sports. Used to follow Sports Tuesday, and we had some fun there back a couple of years ago. So that is it. Again, I want to thank Ken Free for coming on, and that is for me. I had some things I wanted to talk about, but I'll save that for next week. Some issues that have come about recently, but I'll save it for next week. Okay, my conversation with Ken Free was way too good for me to include that in there. So that is it. That is it for me. So let me. Hopefully, my Yankees will win tomorrow and advance to the American League Championship Series against Houston. And if not, oh well, it was still a successful season anyway. All right, so that is it. So until next week, as I always say, be good and be safe. Take care, everybody.
Get at me for beats, y'all.